Good evening. I would like to call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for November 27th, 2023. Would you please stand as you are able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Jenny Snell.
Present.
Scott Holm.
Here.
Rachel Holteen.
Present.
Janice Hoppy.
Present on Zoom.
Oh, thank you. Amanda Weaver.
Here.
Corey Stites.
Here.
Leah Dozeman.
Here.
Dan Larson.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, all 8 members of council are present. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Are there any changes to be noted in the agenda? Seeing none, we'll proceed as presented. We are now at our public's right to speak. Members of the public may come forward to speak at this agenda item for a maximum of 3 minutes under the public's right to speak. When I read your name, you may start speaking. Your time will start when I read your name. Our first speaker is Crystal Nacht.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have anyone by that name online as an attendee.
Okay. I have them signed up to speak. Once again, Crystal Knight. Okay. No speaker there. Our next one, Ursula Haverbeck.
I do not see that name either, Mr. Mayor.
Ursula Haverbeck. Okay. Next speaker is Mary Flem.
Do we have that individual?
Mary Flem.
Mary has been
Nick.
allowed to talk for 3 minutes.
Next speaker is David Cole.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Mary Fagan is online. I just asked her to unmute.
I don't hear anyone coming in, so I'm going to move forward. Let's see, Amber Rosenbaum. Your time begins now. Amber Rosenbaum.
Good evening,
Okay.
Council. And it's Amir Rosenbaum. Thank you very much for my 3 minutes. I would like to talk about the dual citizenship issue that we have with our current federal cabinet. Janet Yellen is the Secretary of Treasury. She has a dual citizenship with Israel. Anthony Blinken is the Secretary of State. He also has a dual citizenship with Israel. Mary Garland is the Attorney General. Again, dual citizen with Israel. Wendy Sherman is the Deputy Secretary of State, dual citizenship with Israel. Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, dual citizenship with Israel. Victoria Nuland, Secretary for Political Affairs, has a dual citizenship with Israel. Eric Lander, Office of Science and Technology Policy, again, dual citizenship with Israel. Avril Haines, the Director of National Intelligence, also has a dual citizenship with Israel. Ron Klain, the White House Chief of Staff, dual citizenship with Israel. David S. Cohen, Director of the CIA, has dual citizenship with Israel. And then the 4-star Admiral Rachel Levine, currently the U.S. Secretary of Health, is a transgender person with a dual citizenship with Israel. And Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Pritzker has a dual citizenship with Israel. Now, I thought this was America. I didn't realize that this was Israel. Why are we allowing anyone that holds a dual citizenship and therefore dual loyalties into public office to begin with? You should be here for Americans and Americans first. They shouldn't be allowed to have a dual citizenship with any country, not specifically Israel. I don't want somebody with a dual citizenship to Mexico being in any important public office. Same thing if it's a dual citizenship with Canada, with Russia, Germany, France. It doesn't matter. They need to be Americans and Americans first. They don't need to have these backdoor ties that the public isn't made openly aware about, they need to be here for us, the United States citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kyle Mearsum. Your time begins now. Kyle Mearsum.
I have no such person online.
Okay.
I don't see that name.
We will move past our online speakers, that's everyone that I had signed up to speak online, and go to our speakers that have signed in to speak tonight. And I've got a lot of feedback coming. Jesse?
Anyone have their audio open on their Zoom? That's what does that. This one's not chatted. So everyone needs to have that muted if they have Zoom open.
Check, check.
Think that's good? That's better? Yeah. Thank you, Jesse. Okay. Our first speaker is Whitney Dempsey, and John Atland is on deck. So if you'd please come to the podium, and when you begin speaking, your 3 minutes will begin.
My name is Reverend Dr. Whitney Dempsey, and I am the interim pastor at Wheat Ridge Presbyterian Church at 9189 West 38th Avenue in Wheat Ridge. I'm also a graduate of Wheat Ridge High School, class of 1986. I am here tonight to publicly condemn and forcibly condemn, in the strongest sense possible, the toxic ideology and mindless anti-Semitic statements hurled at City Council and the citizens of the Wheat Ridge community at the November 13th City Council meeting. This language is degrading, insightful, discriminatory, and hateful. Our motto at Wheat Ridge Presbyterian Church is where people care. Here are a few things that we care about. We care about thoughtful political discourse. We care about the disenfranchised. We care about minorities. And of course, we care about our Jewish brothers and sisters. As political, religious, and sexual harassment increases in the United States, the faith community of Wheat Ridge is responding with a message of inclusion, peace, and love. According to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews, which we just heard, which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals or their property, or towards Jewish community institutions or religious facilities. We've heard all of that at the speech on November 13th. Examples included mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, and stereotypical allegations about Jewish, including the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy, Jews controlling the media, economy, government, and public institutions, and the use of symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, such as Jews killing Jesus, and the use of Nazi sayings. It is clear the anonymous online agenda of these bigots was not to advance any reasonable policy. Their sole purpose was to incite hate, fear, and violence. We believe there is no place for anti-Semitism in Wheat Ridge. We must learn from history, not repeat it. We will call upon Wheat Ridge City Council to work with the city attorney to find a path forward that both protects the First Amendment and sets boundaries around public display of ideology that promotes hate and fear. In closing, to all those who were impacted by the toxic words of last week's meeting, you are seen, you are heard, and you are cared for. In a world struggling to find peace and to show love, we are committed to demonstrating these values as a faith community in Wheat Ridge. We will not tolerate anti-Semitic language, actions, or harassment. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Okay, please, no applause and no jeers for our speakers. That's just the House rules right now. Our next speaker is John Outland, and Becky Jones is on deck.
I'm Pastor John Altland. I pastor the church at 44th and Kipling. That's the United Methodist Church. I'm in my 6th year there, and I came at the invitation of Pastor Dempsey. He asked me to be here to support him, and I support everything that he said. I also wanted to share a personal story. I traveled to Israel with a church group from Arkansas in 1997, and I was so impressed by my visit that I went back in 99, took my daughter Sally. Sally now works for USAID as a Peace Corps volunteer from Botswana, and that trip to Israel made all the difference in the world to her. While we were in Israel, we went to a refugee camp, Palestinian refugee camp. We were driven around the country in the Galilee and also in Judea and Jerusalem by Palestinian drivers. They are the ones who drive the folks who go there to visit and visit religious sites. I just want to say that my impression, my personal impression, having been in country, is that both the Jewish people and the Palestinian people have history, but they also need to have love for one another. Whit shared with you what their motto was. Our motto at the church at 44th and Kipling is love God, love our neighbor, and serve the world. And so I just wanted to say that having been in country personally, my heart is broken for what is going on in Israel and in Gaza. And I just wanted to be here to support the pastors and the faith community of Wheat Ridge, Colorado. I'm in my 6th year as a pastor, and I love living here. And I just wanted to say that. I do have one more thing. If it be okay, I'm also with the Rotary Club, and I brought a check for the Lutheran Medical Foundation for Leah Dozeman tonight at the instruction of my friend Dick Matthews. So Leah, if you'll accept this check from the Wheat Ridge Rotary Club.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you much, Pastor. We'll make sure that we know the distinction on where those funds are to be attributed. Our next speaker is Becky Jones, and Nagai Namiach is online.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I am the Reverend Becky Jones. I'm the rector at St. James Episcopal Church at 8235 West 44th Avenue. I've been there for the past 7 years, and while I live in Arvada, I still feel very connected to the Wheat Ridge community. And I was absolutely appalled by what happened during the public comment section of the council meeting 2 weeks ago. Appalled, but I can't say that I was surprised, given the rising tide of hatred and intolerance in this country. More and more people feel free to voice the most vile, repugnant statements, usually, I think, simply in hopes of getting a rise out of others. These are the same people who hate Muslims, who hate immigrants, who hate members of the LGBT community. They just hate. I'd like to think that what we say here this evening can make a difference, that somehow speaking out, reminding the world that it is the peacemakers, not the hate spreaders and the fear mongers, who are blessed. But given the 24/7 onslaught from some of the shadowy corners of the internet, the task for people of goodwill and good hearts seems overwhelming. It feels as if we are in a dark, dark moment in the history of our country. But on the other hand, perhaps it is our willingness to speak out, even if we wonder what good we can do, is a sign that all is not lost and that we will not lose our nation's soul to the white supremacists, the racists, the neo-Nazis, and other forces of evil that think they are gaining the upper hand. I thank you guys for respecting the principles that bind us as a nation, even when they do not. I thank you for showing courage in the face of their cowardice and for having wisdom in the face of their foolishness. And remember this, we follow the light that shines in the darkness. And the darkness did not overcome it, and it never will. Grace and peace be with you, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Our next speaker is Guy Namiaj, and Amy Dempsey is on deck.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Guy Namiach, Nahmiach, although I guess I could have used a secret word like the Jewish guy. Huge conspiracy, triple citizenships, including Israel. Whew. I just wanted to thank the group of speakers who signed up for public speaking on November 13 and graciously suggested that my people should be rounded up. We often round ourselves up for special occasions like bar mitzvahs, Chinese restaurants on Christmas, brisket at Clancy's. That really brings out the Jewish crowds. It's huge. And while the speakers no doubt love a good white sheet sale at JCPenney, we prefer a good sale on candles right before Hanukkah. It's unfortunate that people have the time and misled passion for wanting the elimination of an entire race. We make up only 0.02 of the population. That's 14 million on this entire planet of, what, almost 8 billion. And yet, millions have tried and will continue trying to eliminate us. But I always remember what my dad used to say: better to have them march down Main Street in broad daylight for the world to see than have them meet in dark basements. As the owner of a local newspaper, it's difficult for me to argue with freedom of speech, the right to share out loud your hatred and vile opinions without being shut down and stifled. My impressions, though, from that Monday night weren't the words of degenerates with parents that are likely brother and sister, but the messages of support I received from council and members of staff. I feel safe, welcomed, and loved in Wheat Ridge. Shalom to you all, my friends.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Amy Dempsey and John Niquette on deck. Jim Niquette, excuse me.
Hi, my name is Amy Dempsey, and I am a resident of Arvada, and I've been a nurse at Lutheran Medical Center for 19 years, where my role focuses on advocacy for women's health. I'm also an active member of the Presbyterian Church. My most important role, however, is that of being a mom. We moved here to Colorado 20 years ago. We chose Jefferson County as our place of residency because it is an amazing, safe place to raise our 3 children. We have found the citizens of Jefferson County to be a community filled with thoughtful, caring, kind, and loving people. We model for our children respectful behavior that teaches them how to resolve conflict through civil dialogue. There is not a place in our community for hatred, hostility, prejudice, and discrimination. While protecting our freedom of speech, we also must respect the rights of personhood and the freedom of religion. There just simply is not room in our community for targeted hate speech against the Jewish community, or for any other group for that matter. I hope that City Council can find a way to balance and tackle this difficult issue of freedom of speech with protection of human rights to ensure this community remains a safe place to raise our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jim Niquette and Matt Dempsey. Matt Dempsey is on deck.
Thank you. My name is Jim Niquette. I live at 3860 on Everett Street in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. And I've attended the same church that Whit Dempsey is now the minister of since 1967, being several years. I think my concern is that the world has allowed others to overtalk others. And I really resent that when I'm in a conversation and people do that to me. So I really I commend you people for having provided the opportunity to speak and say that. I have a granddad that served in World War II, 2 uncles that served in Granddad was World War I, not II. 2 uncles were World War II. They're no longer alive, of course. I served in the Navy as an electronic technician for 4 years in active duty and then another 17 years as a reservist. So I now thank you for allowing me to do that. I think that silence should not rule. That's why we're doing what we're doing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Matt Dempsey, and Doug Dawson is on deck.
Thank you very much. Matt Dempsey from Lakewood, Colorado, Wheat Ridge High School graduate, 1997, and proud brother and of Whit Dempsey, who helped organize tonight. I'm proud of Amy, my sister-in-law, for speaking up. And what I want to say tonight is just thank you to this amazing crowd for showing up tonight after what we saw last week. Thank you to the City Council for how you've handled this. Grateful for a community that has come together, the religious community in particular tonight, to stand up, stand together, and speak out. With that, I'll yield the floor here, if you will, and listen to the rest of these amazing comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Doug Dawson and Ellen Danick. On deck.
I'd like to start by sharing that some years ago there was, I don't even remember what the situation was, but there was a lot of danger happening regarding the Muslim community. I went down and visited with some Muslims and just basically shared with them that, you know, if they needed any people to stand with them, the people in my church, and I'm a Quaker, we'd be willing to go down there and stand between them and whoever were trying to hurt them. So I have compassion for them. But what concerns me the most is, so I wanted to share that because what I'm going to share is going to sound like I'm really against the Muslims. Because there's some important things that need to be understood about these folks. One of the things that I hear is I don't hear any, as folks are coming up here and sharing, I don't hear any insights about what they believe. You need to know the history, what I would really recommend and hope is that the people on this council would take a book up and read about Islam and what they teach, what they believe. Muhammad, they've got a list of like 100 descriptions of Muhammad. One of them is he's the greatest of all deceivers. How do you work with people that pattern their life after that? In the Quran, when it first started out, the Muslims had a lot of compassion for Jews and Christians. They referred to them as the people of the book. But Muhammad got angry because the Jewish community wouldn't accept him as a prophet. So the first group of people that, there were two communities there of Jews, and the first group, he just sent them packing. They were the lucky ones. Some years later, he accused the other group of plotting against them. He had all the men killed and the women and children taken into bondage, into slavery. This is the example that is set for the people in the Islamic community. If we keep looking at this community and trying to understand them, it's good to have compassion for them, but it's good to recognize that these folks are, they're committed to the idea of eliminating the Jewish people. The only difference, if you look at the different cultures, the different groups of Islam, the only thing they disagree about is when it should happen. Not that, that one group says, no, we shouldn't do it, and another group says, no, we should do it. The differences between these different communities, be it Shiite or whatever, is disagreement about who gets to decide when everybody's going to start killing Jews.
Sir, your time has expired.
Pardon me?
Your time has expired.
Okay.
Thank you. Our next speaker is...
Your time has expired. Check it out.
Even though you turn it off. Okay, Ellen Demick, thank you. And our speaker on deck is Ronna Burrows. Please continue.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Danick, and I live in Denver. For almost 10 years, I've owned a business in Wheat Ridge, and I own commercial property here, and I have an office here now. So I have been in the community a while, and like many of the other speakers tonight, I'm here in response to what happened 2 weeks ago. So I think we all know what the calls were about. And I know that it was clear that the speakers who called in and said the hateful things were not from Wheat Ridge, but I also think they were not of Wheat Ridge, based on my experience here. These crouching, furtive little weasels were not examples of the people that I know in the community, and I wanted to talk about that just a little bit. I know that Wheat Ridge is not an anti-Semitic place. I've spent enough time here, talked to enough people, been to enough events, worked enough events to know that. And I think that the cowards who called in 2 weeks ago and the person tonight knew that too. That's why they appeared with fake names and no photos. They were afraid, they were too chicken to show up in person and spew their bile in a room full of people who wouldn't have been on their side. I know that Wheat Ridge, here we have problems like anywhere else, but the Wheat Ridge that I've come to know and love in almost the past 10 years is a place where people treat each other as equals. Not different, not special, but in general as equals. They come together, they work for the community, they raise money for the community. I think probably the best known example of that is the Carnation Festival, but it's by no means the only one. Now, tonight as an individual, I'll say, I know we all have different political views. For example, I fully support Israel's right to defend itself against terrorist attacks. There are probably people in this room, and certainly people in Wheat Ridge, who disagree with me. And that's probably true on a lot of issues. But I know this. The people of Wheat Ridge are not anti-Semitic, they're not hateful, and they are not represented by these little creeps that have tried to hijack this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ronna Burrows, and Rob Robinson is on deck.
My name is Ronna Burrows. I live at 3565 Miller Street, Wheat Ridge. I'm an older generation, class of 74 from Wheat Ridge. I attend Wheat Ridge Presbyterian Church. I am Presbyterian. I am Republican. I am not rabid or right-wing or alt-right, but, and I don't care for the guy who thinks he is, and he's a rhino, is what that is. But I'm here to speak on Americans' First Amendment rights and to denounce cowards and thieves. I stand with people of faith to exercise their right to religion and how to practice it without fear. To be specific, I stand with the Jews, those friends and neighbors I know and those I have not yet met. I also stand with Muslims, Buddhists, Sikhs, Catholics, and other Protestants to exercise their religion without fear. I stand for freedom of speech when it is an honest opinion expressed by a person of conscience, when they use their real name and stand for what they say, not by a coward using a sardonic name. I denounce hate speech and fascist, totalitarian, authoritarian regimes that steal their country's resources for personal gain and start conflicts to hide their theft, avarice, and greed from their people so they won't be overthrown. I denounce the green flag with leaders sacrificing their people so they can live as fat cats in Kedar. The blue, white, red flag of a leader who created a conflict because he used his resources to fill his and his friends' banks and buy yachts, and the leader who gasses his own people because they want fair treatment. Martin Niemöller, a prominent German Lutheran pastor in the 1920s, 30s, and was jailed in the 40s under the Nazis, is often quoted. They came for the socialists. I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. They came for the trade unionists. I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. They came for the Jews. I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. They came for me, and there was no one left to speak out. I denounce cowards, liars, and thieves. I stand for people of faith. I stand with my friends and neighbors and the Jews. And my mother said, you will need to stand for something or you will fall for anything. So I think these people have fallen for something that is not real. And so to last month's cowards and liars, find a better purpose for your life. And the first guy who spoke, I think I noted a little bit of a Canadian accent. Do they not allow you to speak hate in Canada?
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rob Robinson.
My name is Rob Robinson. I live at 4 Hillside Drive, Wheat Ridge, in District 3. First, let me say that I appreciate your service in the venue of democracy here. What brings me here today is the hate speech of 2 weeks ago. I very much appreciate the city's news release on November 14th condemning that hate speech. The hate speech is a symptom of a much broader issue facing the American people, and that is authoritarianism versus democracy. Our current political scene is no longer debates among Republicans and Democrats. Unfortunately, Republicans have knuckled under their extremists, and now it is the party of Trump. The policies proposed by Trump and his followers are anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism against all people of color, discrimination against LGBTQ people, Trump's proposed persecution of his perceived enemies, and Trump's vermin. In other words, anyone who does not support him. You may think that what I'm saying is amusing, far-fetched, or hysterical, but it's not. We have already seen how Trump tried to subvert democracy at the end of his first term. Be reminded that the masses in Germany and Italy mostly remained silent with the excesses of the brown shirts and the black shirts. And subsequently, we had the horrors of fascism and Nazism. And in that last decade or so, 30 countries have become more autocratic. I believe that it is an imperative for Americans to take a strong stand for sustaining our democracy. I urge the City Council to take a leadership role and issue a statement of support for democracy and reject any anti-democratic proposals or policies such as those demanded by the anti-Semitic speakers in your meeting 2 weeks ago. Thanks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's all of the speakers I have signed up to speak, so I want to thank you all for being here. We will go to the next item on our agenda, will be our consent agenda. Councilor Hulteen, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'm enjoying a gummy bear here. Thank you. I'd like to introduce resolution number 50, 2023, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2023 budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $600,000 for the purpose of funding Wadsworth Public Art in emergency stormwater repairs, amending Fund 40 revenues and reducing Fund 40 expenditures by $2,695,003. At issue, sorry, I forgot my computer, so I'm going off my phone here. On occasion, it is necessary to adjust the current budget at year end in order to support the City Council's priorities and align with the estimated budget as presented to Council with the next budget year. This year, budget amendments are needed in Funds 31, which is 2E, 12, Public Art, 12, Open Space, 30, CIP, and 40, Renewal Wheat Ridge Bonds Funds. It is required that City Council authorize increases and reductions to the city's budget by resolution. Item number 1B, resolution number 51, 2023, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2023 general fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $14,177 for the purpose of accepting the 2023 Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant to purchase automated external defibrillator units. At issue, hold please, Yeah, sorry, I thought this would be, okay. At issue, the police department received an Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant Award for $14,177 from the Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs. This grant award was not included in the 2023 budget. And then lastly, I'd like to introduce item number 1C, Resolution 52-2023, a resolution supporting an application for the Community Impact Grant Program from the State Board of the Great Outdoors Colorado Trust Fund to support the construction of the green at 38th. At issue, thank you, Ms. Leah. The Parks and Recreation Department wishes to apply to the Great Outdoors Colorado GOCO Community Impact Grant Program to request $700,000 in funding to support the construction of the green at 38th project. A city council resolution of support is required to apply, which includes supporting the application and, if funded, authorizing the mayor to sign the grant agreement and accept the funding.
Thank you. May I have a motion on the consent agenda items 1A, 1B, and 1C?
Yes, I move to approve consent agenda items 1A, 1B, and 1C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Stites. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion is passed unanimously, including an aye vote from Councilmember Hoppy, who is joining us remotely.
Thank you. Our next item is agenda item number 2. Councilor Ohm, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Council Bill number 28-2023, an ordinance amending Article 7 of Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning the city's billboard regulations and making conforming amendments therewith. At issue, the proposed ordinance updates the city's billboard regulations to accomplish several main goals: to remove the lottery process for billboard vacancies, to reduce the maximum number of billboards within the city as they are abandoned, to establish a maximum distance between billboards and the highway, and to clarify existing development standards.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. This is an ordinance on second reading. It is not quasi-judicial. I'm going to open the public hearing. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We do. Lauren Mikulak, our Community Development Director.
Okay.
Thank you.
Director Mikulak.
We discussed this topic at some length in September, and at that time, staff had recommended several cleanup provisions, and at the time, we were recommending that we reduce the billboard cap from 16 to 15 based on the series of unsuccessful lotteries that we'd had. You may recall that the discussion pivoted a little bit, and so the ordinance before you reflects the council consensus, which was to not only reduce the cap, but to prohibit new billboards, meaning that as billboards are removed, our cap reduces accordingly. So our team worked with Mr. Dahl on that revised approach. State law actually prohibits amortization, so billboards are allowed to remain and be maintained, and you see the provisions for that maintenance. Even removal in order to be maintained is allowed, but likely will result in a reduction of billboards over time, likely decades. We did think it was important to leave some of the development standards in the code because billboards will continue to remain in the community. So those that are maintained or modified would have to comply with those standards. Because of the extent of the changes, the ordinance proposes to repeal and reenact that whole section based on billboards, and so for comparison purposes, we provided for you the existing code as an attachment. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have after public comment.
Okay. Thank you very much. Before we go to questions of council, I will invite the public to speak on this. I have one person signed up to speak, Stephen Shin. You may come to the podium if you would like to, and you may introduce yourself and begin speaking.
Mr. Mayor, we also have one person online who would
Okay.
like to speak on this issue, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Stephen Shin. I represent Outfront Media. We just learned of this proposed ordinance last Friday, November 24th, the day after Thanksgiving. There has been no outreach to the billboard industry stakeholders. We feel it's inappropriate not to contact us about this ordinance that only affects one business only. There are a few issues that are, let me go back. Our company currently operates 6 billboard locations and are a tax-paying business in the city of Wheat Ridge. We do advertise local businesses such as Jersey Mike's, Natural Grocers, Smash Burgers, and ARC thrift stores. There are a few issues that are troublesome, while others are mostly acceptable to us from what we've learned so far. Some of the language is ambiguous, which I know is part of the goal was to clear up some of the ambiguity, but allows for a city building official or property owner to determine, in their opinion, if a billboard is questionable. What does that mean? And not sure what that criteria is to determine if it's unsafe. Respectively, we would request that the City Council table this item to allow us to work with staff to resolve our concerns. We have enjoyed a good working relationship with staff and look forward to do so. Thank you for your consideration. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I have two speakers that have signed up to speak on this item that have joined us online. The first speaker is Chad Kokenberger. Mr. Kokenberger, if you're online, you may unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Can the council hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, sir. For the record, this is Chad Kokenberger, real estate representative, testifying on behalf of Mile High Outdoor Advertising. The city of Wheat Ridge has not reached out to any of the stakeholders throughout this process. This proposed ordinance update is specific to the billboard industry. It seems inappropriate to move forward with the revised language without consulting with the industry it impacts. We would love the opportunity to collaborate with the city and can utilize many of our resources to help craft appropriate language. Mile High Outdoor is a legal tax-paying business in the city of Wheat Ridge and currently owns and operates 3 billboards in the city of Wheat Ridge. It seems that one of the main intents of the code amendment is to get rid of the vagueness within the existing code. There's also some gray area in the newly suggested language, specifically with the maintenance section referencing the opinion of the chief building officer. Lastly, the section regarding the banning of digital billboards because they can be a distraction for drivers. We have many case studies that would suggest otherwise, including the study by the Federal Highway Department, which concludes that they are not a distraction. Not to mention that the city does allow digital on-premise signs. How is ours any different? Our request would be a vote of no on the Bill 28-2023 until there's time to meet with the city and work with the city of Wheat Ridge to propose new sign code recommendations. As mentioned, we want to work with the city on the sign code changes that is beneficial for all parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker I have signed up to join us online is Mr. Mark Gibson. Mr. Gibson, if you can unmute, and we'll bring you into the meeting.
Good evening, council members. This is Mark Gibson. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. So my name is Mark Gibson. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Holland & Hart, and I represent an organization called the Colorado Outdoor Advertising Association. A couple of our members are already here tonight, Outfront Media, Mile High Outdoor, but there are others as well. And I would like to just reiterate a few of the points that Mr. Shin made and that a former speaker just made. And that is to highlight that there was no outreach to or collaboration with the key stakeholders of this ordinance, which is, of course, billboard companies, which is the association that I represent. I, for example, learned about this ordinance and this second reading on the ordinance earlier this afternoon. So merely hours ago was when we were first notified as an association that this ordinance was up for meeting tonight. In all candor, I just don't understand why the city did not make any effort to reach out to and to collaborate with key stakeholders who will be directly affected by this ordinance. That lack of outreach is particularly puzzling given that all of the members of my association are legal companies that contribute taxpayer dollars to the city of Wheat Ridge and that have historically hosted billboards for local businesses and companies within the community of Wheat Ridge. We have been a part of this community for years and hope to continue to be. And so it's a little bit puzzling and frankly a little bit disturbing that we've been sort of left in the dark here. And so for that reason alone, we don't believe it would be either wise or appropriate for the city to move forward with voting on this ordinance today without first affording an opportunity for collaboration and conversation and dialogue between the city and the key stakeholders, the billboard owners. And we don't think that that collaboration would be a futile gesture. I'd like to point out just 3 examples where I think the proposed ordinance would benefit from the insights and collaboration that we are proposing here. As mentioned a little bit earlier, the proposed ordinance would not allow for changeable copy billboard signs. And typically those are digital signs where the advertisement can change. And we really see at least 2 issues there that we would like the opportunity to sort of flesh out in greater detail with the city. The first is that it appears that that prohibition rests on this assumption that changeable copy signs are more distracting than other types of signage. But as the former speaker just mentioned, and that I would reiterate, there are literally hundreds of pages of case studies conducted across the country, including a study recently conducted by the Federal Highway Administration that suggests that changeable copy signs and digital signs are no more distracting than any other type of signs, including static signs. And the second problem we see with the changeable copy billboard prohibition in the proposed ordinance is that it creates this sort of false dichotomy, because it's our understanding that the city does permit changeable copy billboards for on-premise advertising, but not for off-premise advertising. So that's a distinction that to us makes little common sense, and it also potentially poses problems under the Equal Protection Clause. So there are legal issues with that as well. A second area where we think that collaboration and dialogue between the city and the billboard companies would be beneficial is in trying to clear up some of the vague provisions in the newly proposed ordinance. For example, if we go to the maintenance section, the very first provision says that billboards will need to be maintained, must be maintained in a, quote, neat and safe condition. But the provision doesn't provide any guidance on what does it mean for a billboard to be, quote, neat, and what qualifies as a, quote, safe condition of the billboard. Those are vague terms that could create all sorts of problems going forward in enforcement and in regulatory entities like my companies trying to understand and comply with this ordinance. And so we would welcome and love the opportunity to work with the city to help bring more clarity and definition to what those terms mean and what the city is truly intending to accomplish through those terms. In the same vein, the maintenance section empowers the chief building official to notify a billboard owner whenever the official holds the opinion that the billboard safety is, quote, questionable. But here again, that is an extraordinarily vague term. What does questionable mean? And we would love the opportunity to put some more meat on that bone through a collaborative effort between the city and the key stakeholders of this ordinance to flesh out exactly what the city has in mind there and what does count as questionable or problematic safety concerns that would trigger this capacity of the chief building official to provide this notification to the billboard owners. And as mentioned before, it also gives really unfettered discretion to reject a billboard's owner's effort to offer a certificate of compliance, offer a certificate of safety for these billboards, and to insist that the billboard be turned down. That also presents problems, not only in terms of vagueness, but whenever city codes, municipal ordinances provide that kind of unbridled discretion to a single governmental official, that raises potential due process concerns and issues for the city that we, again, would just love the opportunity to help sort through. And then finally, the third area where we see potential benefit from a more collaborative approach here is in the abandonment provision in the proposed ordinance. And just one example there, it says that a property owner on which a billboard is located, not just the billboard owner, but also the property owner, can file a written notice stating an intent to abandon the billboard. But that doesn't really jibe with the reality of how this works. In the mine run of cases, the way this works is the billboard is owned by a particular entity, often an entity like one of my clients, but the property belongs to somebody else. So it doesn't really make sense, just from a practical standpoint, to have a situation where the property owner can provide notice of abandonment of a sign that they potentially don't even own. So that's just one more example of where we think that the language could be clarified and could benefit from the input and collaboration from the key stakeholders, the entities that are actually regulated by these ordinances and that have to live with them day in and day out. So for all of those reasons, we think that the more prudent course would be for the city to put this ordinance, put a stay on the ordinance, don't move forward with a reading that adopts the ordinance tonight, to create more space and more time for more collaboration and more dialogue with the folks who are going to be subject to these new rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak on this. If you're here and haven't signed in, you may come to the podium and speak on this item, and I don't see anyone coming forward. So I'm going to open the conversation to City Council. Questions? Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, let me just give staff, Ms. Michalak or Mr. Dahl, maybe an opportunity to kind of answer some of those questions or concerns raised by some of our commenters.
Yeah, thank you. In the past, our speakers are correct that the billboard industry was engaged, particularly when we created the lottery process that has been in place for the last 10 to 15 years. There's no active billboard lottery in process right now, so the purpose of this code amendment is really to memorialize our status quo, allowing existing billboards to remain as is. We do sometimes proceed with public engagement, sometimes minimally, sometimes robustly, and sometimes not at all, especially when policy direction is clear. In terms of a couple of the provisions that were raised, the authority of the building official, that is an authority that already exists in the code in the general provisions of the sign code if there's any unsafe sign, billboard, or regular sign. So we're not, that's not a new approach for our code. And there are no changeable copy billboards in the city, and this is because of a long-standing prohibition that we've had in interpretation of our code. We do recognize changeable copy on private property differently than we do for billboards because we can regulate the time, place, and manner of signs and structures differently. I'll allow Mr. Dahl, if you want to respond to some of the other provisions and comments.
Sure, just 2 points. Relative to maintenance, I'd underscore what Ms. Michalak said about the authority of the building official already. I'd also note that the ordinance in the section on maintenance as drafted not only requires a certificate from a registered professional engineer, and if you provide that certificate, that's a way of countering the determination by the building official. So there's really a check on the building official's unwarranted discretion. And you have the opportunity under that same section, if that certificate is rejected, to provide a revised certificate. So there are 2-3 bites of the apple in terms of being able to defend whatever level of maintenance has been given. I would say in terms of the industry's awareness of our regulations here, the industry's been not shy about suing the city, and we've defended and are on appeal with a successful defense most recently of action that the city's taken on billboards. The industry's, I think, fairly well aware of what we do. I respect the fact that there was not a requirement, and there isn't a requirement for legislation to be taken out to affected bodies. But this is a body that's fairly well engaged, I think, in that process. Lastly, I understand and appreciate the concern about, well, the abandonment application to be potentially filed by a property owner. The city has had the experience of a property owner saying, and billboard companies saying, this billboard was removed, so now this property is available again. And so very often, or often enough, and we've had the experience, and it's resulted in litigation, where the billboard owner and the property owner are not in agreement as to whether or not the billboard's there, or is allowed to be there. And I believe it's fair for the city to give a role to property owners where these billboards are located in the abandonment process. Thanks.
Sorry, if I can ask just kind of
You
a
have a
follow-up
follow-up?
question. Yes,
Okay.
sir, thank you. would it be helpful to, well, kind of what was suggested tonight, put a hold on this and reach out to the billboard community for revisions and outreach? Is that, do you feel that we can refine this down a little bit more?
I appreciate the interest in having a conversation, but I do feel confident about the code amendment that we've proposed tonight.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'd also indicate legislation's a continuing thing. This is not a one-off. This is not ever the last opportunity to address the billboard ordinance. It's been amended a number of times since I've been the city attorney, and it'll probably be amended in the future to the extent, you know, the industry collects issues that are of concern, and we do that with other aspects of the code as well. As questions or problems come up, we make little notes, and there's a file, and it comes time where it's appropriate and useful and effective to make additional adjustments, and we make adjustments also based upon experience of the new revision and the new code. And I would suggest that give this revision of the code a chance to see what other issues might pop up. Certainly, when there is outreach, the staff always responds and has dialogue, and that may result in future and additional refinements to this ordinance.
Okay, so you're saying the door's not shut even if
Not
this is
shut,
passed?
never, it's never shut, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Councilor Hoppy joining us online.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll lower my hand. Lauren, can you, from what I remember from our discussion is that, we had tried to fill a billboard for 10 years, which is kind of what sort of triggered the, kind of what put the ball in action for this update to our code. And so if you could just talk about that just a little bit, and then I have a question for Mr. Dahl after that.
Yes, thank you. So the study session memo outlined a lot more of the detail of this, but essentially when we had our last code amendment related to billboards, creating the lottery definition and revising the definition of a billboard to say that it needed to be oriented to the highway, it created 2 vacancies because we deemed at the time 2 billboards to no longer be billboards. And so for one of those vacancies was filled pretty quickly, and the second has taken us the better part of 8 years with consecutive lotteries. Sometimes applicants have had to withdraw because they couldn't meet city requirements. Sometimes they withdrew because they couldn't meet the CDOT requirements, which also apply to billboards. And it's taking an inordinate amount of staff time over the years to fill what seems like it may not be possible to fill. And that is part of the reason that we had originally recommended the reduction of the cap from 16 to 15. So we do have a fair amount of lessons learned over that period of time.
Thank you for that. And then, Mr. Dahl, I just want to say that I am in favor of moving forward and voting yes for this recommended motion tonight. But if it's already, the motion's been made, it has a second. If it fails, isn't there a waiting amount of time, like a waiting period before anything new on this topic could come back in front of us?
Well, this is an ordinance, and I'd have to check council rules, but I think what you're probably talking about is land use applications. That if a land use application is denied, then there's a cooling off period. You can't bring the same application back. This is legislation, and so that period does not apply, and I think the council rules don't address that, and so therefore, if tomorrow, the next day, next month, there's an ordinance that's desired to be brought amending this particular code section, then that would be all right.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Dahl has officially answered my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Dozman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could staff talk a little bit about the tax revenue generated by the billboards or lack thereof per our packet?
Yeah, I am probably not the expert on that. I don't know. Excuse me.
There is no tax revenues generated from billboards. As some of the speakers mentioned, there's advertising for local businesses potentially, which may have a benefit, but they've mentioned a few businesses that are advertised, but I'm not sure how many actually are. I don't remember seeing any of those businesses advertised, but they could be.
Okay, my other question was in regards to like the changeable copy billboards. So there are some along I-70, like the frontage road, but I believe those are on private property and that's why they can have kind of switching ads.
Yes, so there are private properties that qualify for freestanding signs, which are allowed to be taller because they are close to the highway, and those can be changeable copies. So they're not as large as the really full-size billboards, but that's what you're seeing is the freestanding sign that is a highway-oriented height.
And so they're allowed to run advertisements for other businesses, not their own?
When the Supreme Court decided on the Reed versus Gilbert case, they changed the rules nationally on how you can regulate what we used to call off-premise signs. So at this moment, if any business wants to give their sign allowance to business not on that property, that's allowed under the Supreme Court ruling. So we modified the sign code at that time, and some people do that. We created some regulations related to changeable copy signs a number of years ago related to light nuisance and the frequency with which that message can change. It has to be more of like a slideshow than a video screen. So static images that change instantaneously, but could be for non-local businesses.
Those are actually a lot nicer than the billboards, I must say.
Additional questions of council? Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was not present in this study session during which this was discussed, but I was on Planning Commission while Planning Commission considered this very same issue. And from there, I boiled it down to 3 issues, and this will kind of explain why I'm supporting a postponement of the action tonight. The billboards provide no revenue to the city and do not usually advertise for local businesses. Second, the changeable signs, this staff suggests adding a prohibition against changeable since they can be very distracting. Once abandoned or removed, a new billboard cannot be installed there or in a new location. It should also be noted that a new full-size changeable electronic sign was recently installed in Arvada across the frontage road just west of Allison Street. This is directly across from the Wheat Ridge Industrial Park. This two-sided V-shaped low-rise sign is easily visible to westbound traffic down the interstate. A little bit of background, and we've heard some from our folks representing the outdoor industry. Basically, real estate owners lease the space on their property for the billboard. The company is responsible for maintenance and advertisements on that billboard. The company then earns revenue from advertisers. A portion of that revenue and the monthly lease payment is paid to the property owner. The property owner then sends some of that revenue to the city in the form of taxes. Billboard rents have doubled over the past decade. This is due to the increased traffic on the highway, combined with a decrease in advertising viewers of newspapers, magazines, radio, and television due to the internet. In addition, the overall supply of billboards is limited by the Federal Highway Beautification Act. That limitation is unlikely to be relaxed anytime soon. With the supply of billboards strictly limited and the demand skyrocketing, the billboard industry is seeing tremendous growth in revenue with limited ability to expand. I generally think this is a bad policy. If the abandoned billboard property changes hands, it deprives the new owners of potential revenue, and it sends a message that Wheat Ridge favors restrictions on property owners' fair use of their land. That's why I recommend postponing the decision tonight.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before I close the public hearing and ask for a motion? Once I do, we'll just be debating the motion. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Councilor Ohm, a motion is in order.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill number 28-2023, an ordinance repealing and reenacting Section 26-712 of Article 7 of Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning the city's billboard regulations and making conforming amendments therewith on second hearing, order it published, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Hulteen. Is there discussion on the motion? Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be voting to support this. I appreciate the thoughtful responses from Dr. Mikulak and Mr. Dahl. And I think it's well written. I think it's responsive to our policy discussion. And I appreciate that, you know, we're hearing from the billboard industry. But I was sitting here thinking, you know, we've had plenty of city council, you know, discussions and hearings where we're not reaching out to, you know, owners of drive-throughs. And, you know, and so I realize it's a pretty specific industry, but I think the corrections in this code are in line with our community values. And I actually appreciate the community planning catching the changeable signs. I mean, my thing on it is, you know, we have a gigantic freeway that goes through our community, and it like cuts through my district, it cuts through District 4. And that interstate is actually a lot of people's introduction and experience to our community. And it is, you know, those billboard signs actually are part of our community identity. And so I'm in favor of the way this is written, and I'm glad that we're not going to be allowing the changeable billboards. I think that, you know, the ones that are in place on the private business, those are, you know, nice. And I'm not very excited about like the prospect of driving through Wheat Ridge and having, you know, big bright billboards in the middle of the night, and especially because I live right next to I-70, and that's, you know, you can regulate light pollution, but it still shows up. So I will be voting in favor of this, and I just appreciate staff's thoughtful write-up after a long discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also going to be supporting this, not because I think it's a perfect ordinance by any means. I think that there is some ambiguity, and I think there's some places where if the billboard industry is open to working with the city staff, there's now a door open. You work with Ms. Mikulak and her team, and I'm sure that there's some places and some gaps that can be filled, but I think that as Mr. Dahl said, this is a first step, and, you know, legislation is always ongoing. We talked about this with the noise ordinance and other things that we've put on. This is just kind of the next step in the evolution of billboards in the city. So I'm going to support this, and I hope that the billboard industry will continue to work with city staff to bring forward some more recommendations to continue to clean up the code and to you know, maybe look at some of the moving billboards and things like that, because with some study on that, depending on how neighbors and some public outreach feel, that might be something we can look at in the future. But for today, I'm going to definitely be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So while I appreciate the intent behind this in clarifying the maximum distance between billboards and the highway and the code, since having the discussion on study session and seeing this in the packet and having some of our speakers come in and speak this evening, I do think that this is a valid use on property, and advertising for businesses, whether they're local or not, is an appropriate use in our community. And so I will not be supporting this this evening just because of the concerns, particularly. And I have to disagree with the changeable copy signs. I think that they're awesome. I drive by them almost every day on the I-70 and frontage road. I know many businesses. I see many businesses that are advertised on that, including nonprofits. And so I appreciate them utilizing that and having it be another revenue stream for private businesses. And so I will be voting no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm going to be probably somewhere in the middle. I think that I welcome staff if they feel you know, I trust staff and Attorney Dahl to, if you feel like you need to refine some of the definitions, fine tune them, I'd be in favor of that, but I will be supporting it. I've yet to have any of my constituents say that we absolutely love the billboards, please have more. That's not the case. I do agree that there is some identity, you know, with having billboards, you know, along the I-70. I think it's a personal preference whether or not you're for or against, you know, having really bright lights when it's dark outside. I'm not one of those that, you know, the light sensitivity is sometimes too much on some of these billboards. And I really appreciate staff looking at this, you know, from not just one, you know, property owner, but looking at the greater good of the city, of how can we, you know, do better for our city. And thank you for all your effort. Thank you.
Additional discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Councilmember Hoppy, what say you?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed by a vote of 6 aye and 2 nay, cast by council members Dozman and Larson.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. We will go now to agenda item number 3. Councilor Snell, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 30-2023, an ordinance amending Section 2-33 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning Community Service Officer Code enforcement powers. At issue, in an effort to bring greater compliance to the city's licensing programs, a new compliance officer position is being created through a vacancy on the Community Services Officers Team, CSOs. This position will focus on licensing compliance rather than typical CSO duties. In order to meet the objective of ensuring compliance with licensing programs, the city's Code of Laws needs to be amended to expand the scope of city employees that are able to issue municipal court summons, including Chapter 11 licensing violations. Furthermore, the code should also reflect that compliance officers shall be designated as peace officers akin to a CSO.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on first reading to set the date, time, and location for a public hearing. Councilor Snell, may I have a motion on this item?
Thank you. I move to approve Council Bill number 30-2023, an ordinance amending Section 2-33 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning Community Service Officers enforcement powers. Order it published. Public hearing set for Monday, December 11th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. as a virtual meeting and in City Council chambers, and that it takes effect 15 days after final publication.
May I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Stites. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Councilmember Hoppy, what say you? Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you. We will now go to agenda item number 4. Mayor Pro Tem Stites, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 31-2023, an ordinance vacating any interest held by the city in a portion of Clear Creek Drive, a public roadway. At issue, Clear Creek Drive is currently under construction to extend the roadway approximately 500 feet to the northwest. As part of the extension, the existing cul-de-sac bulb was demolished and reconstructed. City staff has determined that the sidewalk easement at the previous cul-de-sac location are no longer necessary and will be vacated by this ordinance.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on first reading to set the date, time, and location for a public hearing. May I have a motion on this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill number 31-2023, an ordinance vacating any interest held by the city in a portion of Clear Creek Drive, a public roadway. Order it published, public hearing set for Monday, December 11th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. as a virtual meeting and in City Council chambers, and then take effect immediately after final publication.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Ohm. Will the clerk please poll the council?
Councilmember Hoppy, you vote aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will now move to agenda item number 5. Councilor Dozman, would you please introduce this item?
Council Bill number 32-2023, an ordinance vacating any right-of-way interest held by the city in a portion of Miller Court. At issue, a portion of right-of-way near Miller Court and West 37th Place has been deemed to be unnecessary by the Community Development Department. This portion of right-of-way is not built or used as a roadway and is proposed to be vacated.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on first reading to set the date, time, and location for a public hearing. May I have a motion on this item?
I move to approve Council Bill Number 32, 2023, an ordinance vacating any interest held by the city in a portion of Miller Court, order it published, public hearing set for December 11th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. as a virtual meeting and in city council chambers, and that it takes effect immediately after final publication.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Stites. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Councilmember Hoppe, you are voting aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion is passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will now go to agenda item number 6. Councilor Larson, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. This is resolution number 53-2023, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2023 Police Investigations Fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $27,503.77 to be used for specific law enforcement purposes as approved by the Seizure Fund Committee and closing the fund at the end of the fiscal year 2023. At issue, the Police Investigations Fund, also known as Seizure Fund 17, consists of money that is forfeited by felony defendants through a civil hearing process. The city has chosen to close Fund 17 in anticipation of changes to asset forfeiture laws and to use the balance of the fund to purchase law enforcement aircraft drones to be deployed for public safety missions and education.
Thank you. This will be a resolution of the council. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We do a brief addition to that issue statement, Chief Murtha.
Chief Murtha.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'll be relatively brief on this topic. You're all familiar with drones and the proliferation of drones throughout society. Fund 17 is a sort of a budget item that's come up every year. We've always kept that as sort of a reserve to hedge our bets against things that may or may not come through in federal grants. This year, we're asking to spend all of that. We will not replenish that budget due to not only existing laws, but what we anticipate is future laws about how federal seizure funds work. This will be the elimination of that fund moving forward. That's what we anticipate. In professional policing, we focus on technology. In professional policing trade magazines and throughout the industry, we talk about how we can leverage technology to be a force multiplier. This is one of those ways. It is certainly a cost-effective way to bring safety not only to officers in high-risk situations, but also to assist law enforcement in setting up perimeters, finding lost or missing people, and covering a lot more ground. On any given day, potentially 5 to 6 officers might be working. If we have one incident on one end of town, we are down to 2 or 3. And if we're looking for a lost individual or we have a criminal activity, this would give us the advantage, and I don't want to put a number on it, but it provides what would normally take many more officers to cover a lot more ground. So it is a force multiplier. For Wheat Ridge, we see many of our peers, we're not breaking ground here, have this program already. This is an opportunity for us. Instead of my previous employment, we had helicopters, hugely expensive, very dangerous, and certainly without much more capability, quite honestly. There are tremendous advantages to having a drone. We would purchase 3 drones, different sizes. There are training requirements to be a drone operator. Drones are generally only flown where open airspace is, unless there's an emergency. There is accountability and legal requirements. Officers attend a training program right now at Colorado State University that provides insights into legal arguments around when you can and can't use a drone. We will not be looking in people's windows. We will certainly only be using this in the manner that we currently have access to people's private property in the same way. So this does not advantage us in some way that we are not already privileged to. That being said, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Before we go to questions from council, I will go to questions from the public. I don't have anyone signed up to speak on this, either in council chambers or online. And I don't, if you would like to speak on this and haven't signed, you may go to the podium. I don't see anybody going, so we'll go to questions from council on this. Councilor Weaver.
I just want to voice my support. As you can see, I was on the Seizure Fund Committee and did sign my name to this in support. I am very familiar with drone technology, and I use it in my own job. And I just, to mirror what Chief Murtha said, it is highly regulated, even for police forces, as far as what's allowed, what's not. It's also controlled by the FAA, right? Did I say that right?
You did.
FFA? FAA, sorry, that's farming. So I would encourage all of my fellow counselor members to be supportive of this as well. I think this is a great opportunity for our police to use this. And 3 drones for this amount is quite a deal. So that's how much they cost, and I'm impressed that you can get 3 for that.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Weaver. I'll not be buying any drones for Christmas. Councilor Dozeman.
I do have a couple questions. So one is just in regards to the anticipation of changes to the asset forfeiture laws. If you could kind of give some background and history to that, and then I'll follow up with the second question in regards to this directly.
Yes, I can add some insight into that. Our the current state of asset forfeiture does not directly provide funds to the municipality. As a member of the West Metro Drug Task Force, there is a funding formula for the task force, which is then potentially dispersed to member agencies. However, right now, pending federal law suggests that that may be eliminated altogether, that those funding streams may no longer be accessible to police departments, that assets that are seized by police departments would go to a general federal budget. There's quite a bit of conversation about it, and it's too in-depth to go into here, but that looks like the end of the funding opportunity through that mechanism.
Thank you. And then could you just give some examples as to the circumstances in which you would use these specifically?
Yes, we currently use them for searches in the Greenbelt, missing children, people who have dementia and that sort of issue, and we can call our member agencies that have them to come in and assist us. We use it for traffic accidents. A lot of the evidence collection that we use now, and our evidence collection partners through Lakewood use a drone. That's very helpful to juries and members of the public who would sit and review that. Certainly in high-risk situations, such as a SWAT call-out, we can use a drone instead of a human asset to look inside a window and see if there's somebody is inside, to see if they are a threat. We would have a small drone that we could actually fly inside a house if we need to look inside that house for potential hazards for officers. So as a public safety tool, this drone would also, we would have one of these drones would be equipped with a speaker and a light system. So providing a light to an area that's darkened also provides safety to officers, or provides the ability to look to find a missing child or whatnot. And the speaker system allows us to call out to people who might be lost, hurt, or injured in the city.
Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. I actually got to see this summer, I was on my bike ride on 32nd and by Maple Grove, and I think there was a SWAT team this summer that had the drone out there looking for somebody. And I knew what it was right away. And I kind of felt, that having that drone up there was it didn't, it put me on alert, but I didn't feel as nervous as I think some people might if there was a lot of police officers swarming in, so it felt more controlled and more patient by having that drone in the air. So I'm definitely in support of that. I hope that maybe in the future, once the program takes off, there might be maybe some learning opportunities, for candidates or even like high school, teenagers to, take a look and say, look at this as a career. I think drones are a really good investment for the city. Thank you.
Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are just 2 anecdotes, but when I first started getting involved in the city, and the city graciously kept letting us use the police meeting room upstairs, and I remember being informed that all the furniture was purchased through the forfeiture and seizure fund, and that was my first encounter with it. So that was good use of those funds, and I think the drones is a great closeout use of it. Just a personal story, years and years ago, I was physically assaulted while running on the Cherry Creek, or I'm sorry, on the Platte River Trail. And one of the protocols is that they called a helicopter out to like go see if they could find the perpetrator. And it was just such a colossal waste of a helicopter and the manpower to do that, because, I mean, by the time they summoned the helicopter, so much time had passed. But so I'm just really aware that like having access to drones in our community for when we have incidents on the Clear Creek, or just being able to be more responsive and get to places that a police car may not be able to get to in a timely way, could actually make a big difference. So I think it's great that we are adding this to our tool belt, and I hope to never have to see one, but I am glad that they're going to be at our disposal.
Further discussion on this item? Yes? Councilor Larson.
First, I'd like to say that drones are very effective, and I know that will improve the overall effectiveness of the police department here in Wheat Ridge. My question, though, is that when we get some clarity on the asset forfeiture laws and how that will be straightened up, because I really believe that these are an effective part of the deterrence to criminal activity is the fact that if you commit a crime and you lose all of your stuff, then where are you? So I believe asset forfeiture laws are effective, and hopefully we can get this clarified. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from council on this, or staff on this item? Okay. Councilor Larson, may I please have a motion on item number 6?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Resolution 53-2023, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2023 Police Investigations Fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $27,503.77 to be used for specific law enforcement purposes as approved by the Seizure Fund Committee, and closing the fund at the end of fiscal year 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Ohm. Sorry, is there discussion on the motion? Councilor Dozman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have had the privilege of serving as parade chair for 7 years for the Carnation Festival, and I think that this would be an amazing use logistically and strategically for our police department. I think this is a wonderful way to invest into our police department, and I think that the drones as a whole will allow for a less invasive and safer method to do searches or kind of just determine what it is that you're walking into. So I really appreciate you strategically using these funds in closing this account, and for your work in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll echo Councilor Dozman's sentiments. I think this is a great use for this fund. I think that I'm not sure that I agree that closing it is the best thing, but I understand that laws are laws, and that's how it goes. But and by the way, Fund 17 is like the coolest fund name ever. Just like, just keep it ambiguous. Just Fund 17. We don't talk about. It's the secret. It's the whatever. But I agree that the drones are going to help multiply our manpower, and as a community that probably doesn't have a lot of access to helicopters and things like that, this is a much better use of our funds and our time. So I really appreciate Chief Murtha and his team for finding the best use of all of our dollars on this. So thank you, and I will be supporting this.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council? Okay, thank you very much. Just going to look for that. All right, we will go to agenda item number 7. Councilor Weaver, would you please introduce this item?
I would, but
On November 1, 2023, Teresa Linder from District 3 resigned from the Cultural Commission effective immediately. The vacancy was posted for a term of 2 weeks on the City of Wheat Ridge website and promoted through various channels. From November 6 to November 19, applications have been compiled for council's review so that the seat may be filled. If, after reasonable advertisement, no applications are received from residents within the relevant council district for a vacancy on any board or commission, the council may appoint any otherwise qualified resident.
Thank you. This is a motion of the council. Do you have a motion on this item?
I do. We have a District 3 person, and I would like to, do I move? Do I make a move? Okay.
Move a
I
person.
move to nominate Sandra Davis of District 3 for the open seat on the Cultural Commission.
Second.
There is a motion and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Stites. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, real quick.
Yes, pardon me.
Sorry, I had my hand up. I'm just wondering if there's a need to add when the term ends on this item.
I don't know when the term ends.
Mr. Dahl.
Okay, it's actually in the packet. I'll grab it for you. Hold on. Let me get to that page.
March 2nd, 2026.
Yeah, March 2nd, 2026. Do we need to add that to the motion?
Just indicate it's added to your motion and the second can agree. No, you can just indicate it's added
Okay.
to your motion.
I'm going to amend to my original motion that the term ends March 2nd, 2026.
Did you approve that as a second?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we have an amended motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the amended motion? Hearing none, will the clerk please poll the council? Thank you for the clarity.
The motion has carried unanimously, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. This brings us to agenda item number 8. This is my big show here. This is a motion to elect the mayor pro tem. Each year, the city council members elect by majority vote a mayor pro tem who serves until their successor is elected. The elected is conducted in accordance with section Roman numeral 3B of the City Council Rules of Order and Procedure as follows. B, Mayor Pro Tem, item number 1. At the first or second regular meeting in November of each year, the council shall elect a Mayor Pro Tem who shall serve until their successor is elected. The procedure shall be as follows. A, the chair will announce that the floor is open for nominations for the purpose of the Mayor Pro Tem. B, nominations will be taken from city council members by voice vote. No second is needed. C, each nominee will have the opportunity to address the council. D, a motion and second is then in order to elect one of the nominees to the position of Mayor Pro Tem. If the motion is not carried, additional motions are in order until the Mayor Pro Tem is elected by a majority vote of the council present. I would like to announce that the floor is open for nominations for the position of Mayor Pro Tem and recognize Councilor Weaver.
I would like to nominate Councilmember Corey Stites.
Okay. Councilor Stites has been nominated. Are there further nominations from the floor? Any more further nominations from the floor? I'm going to close the nominations, and a motion is in order. Councilor Weaver. Yes, you may.
I move that we vote for Councilmember Corey Stites to be Mayor Pro Tem, term ending
Just until replaced.
until replaced.
Is there a second to the motion? A second by Councilor Ohm? Oh, I guess I'm supposed to, let's see. So I wanted to see if you wanted to address the council before we vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the nomination, and I appreciate hopefully everybody's support. We had a really good year this past year. I think that 2J was very successful, and I think that We have two new fantastic counselors with us. I'm looking forward to hopefully serving this role again for another year, and I appreciate everybody's support, and anything I can do, please reach out. I think both Patrick and Ally asked me a good question last year when I was elected. You know, did I have goals or did I have an agenda that I wanted to put forward? And I don't really think that this role is really about me and what I want. It's more about what you guys are pushing forward and the great ideas that we have on this council, and moving those forward and making sure that the citizens are getting the best out of us. So hopefully that's something that we were able to do this year, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again. So I appreciate everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Stites has been elected Mayor Pro Tem unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, she was tallied in the vote also, but thank you for checking. Okay, that concludes our agenda items for tonight. Let's move to city managers' matters. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, can't believe I'm saying this, but our Christmas lighting, holiday lighting ceremonies this Saturday on the green, 38th Avenue, 3 to 6:30. Lights should come on at the mayor's touch of a button at about 6:15, right? So
I take a little light, a little Bic lighter, and go around and light all of the candles on the tree.
So hope to see everybody there. It's always a great time. Thank you.
City attorney's matters, Mr. Dahl.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to city elected officials matters. I'm going to start with our clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two quick items. One, now that council has passed a new ordinance regulating the attendance at board and commission meetings and requiring annual reports, it falls upon the staff and the clerk's office to create the process that will make that as easy as possible for councilmen. I would ask that council designate someone with whom we shall consult on questions related to how this will work for the council. Our current process is not sufficient now because it doesn't attend to some of the new requirements in that ordinance. So give some thought, please, to how you would like to give your input, and please let me know. The second item is to let you know that we still have no resolution to the action filed by the plaintiffs in the matter of referring Ordinance 1744, auxiliary dwelling units, to the voters. As you will recall, I declared their petition insufficient. Judge Basso heard 14 hours of hearings and agreed with my determination. I haven't reported anything up till now because there has been nothing to report except that the plaintiffs have again asked for further delays. When the case is over, I will have a more detailed report. Trust me, we're watching it every day. Tomorrow, I'm going to get to spend half of my day doing more clerical work with those petitions in response to requests from our attorneys. So the matter is not resolved, and I will certainly report details when it is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Did you have a question on that? No? Okay. Whether Councilor Hoppe is still with us, I wanted to give her an invitation.
she jumped off.
She hopped off?
Yep.
Okay. Then let me go to Councilor Weaver.
Thanks. I just want to report that the goats are really happy at Happiness Gardens. I did want to say one thing, though. Sometimes I get reports from people that the goats are not being fed. And so sometimes I'm at Happiness Gardens and there's a pile of pumpkins, which is very kind, but the goats are actually there to eat everything down at Happiness Gardens. So the less they are fed other lovely things from your garden, the more they will do their job at Happiness. So know that they are being well fed. They're all very, very fat and healthy creatures. And that's the report, though my other counselors from 2 might want to also report on Happiness. So thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go to Councilor Hulteen.
Well, I was going to give the Happiness Gardens report. But we are loving the goats there. There's one goat in particular who's got a little bit of an attitude, which makes it all the more entertaining to walk by Happiness Gardens. And it just continues to impress me that little garden is such a community builder. Every time I've walked by in the last week to admire the goats and to get yelled at by one of the goats. There have been numerous other people, including families and just curious neighbors. So I think it's one of the things that makes Wheat Ridge particularly wonderful and quirky and makes me very proud of what we're doing in District 2. So we unfortunately heard from another person who's taking advantage of our generous making Zoom available to our community to provide comment at our meetings. And I hope that we continue to do that because access to civic voice is one of my fundamental beliefs and part of why I serve. So I hope, having 2 city council meetings in a row where we have anonymous people who don't have the courage to give their real names or show their faces in this community, just barrage us with just vitriol and hate. So I just would like to read a couple of my favorite Martin Luther King Jr. quotes. While Patrick and I were in Atlanta, I visited Martin Luther King Jr.'s house that he grew up in and the church where his father was a pastor. So here are just a couple of good quotes from him tonight. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And then hatred paralyzes love. Hatred paralyzes life, love releases it. Hatred confuses life, love harmonizes it. Hatred darkens life, love illuminates it. And I think those quotes tonight are particularly resonant as our community showed up and used their voices with their in-person faces to demonstrate who we are as a community. And I will say that what we experienced here was a lot of love and generosity, and there was no hate in this room tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Go to Mr. Larson.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank all of the folks from our community that came this evening to show their support and speak against what happened 2 weeks ago. It just goes to show those that really do live in our community, and it speaks to their character that they showed up here in response to that vitriol, hate speech that was shared with us 2 weeks ago. And so I really love where I live. I've had the immense privilege of living here my entire life and now raising my 2 sons here. And it really is just such an amazing place. And Ellen, I really just love how you spoke specifically to the people that you've interacted with in this community, because I think it speaks a lot. And so I really appreciate everyone coming and speaking to that this evening and showing up in force. And so just keep on being Wheat Ridge because you make it wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dozeman. Councilor Snell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 quick things. Number 1, this past Saturday was Small Business Saturday. We are fortunate in Wheat Ridge to have a lot of lovely, great small businesses, and I got out and patronized some of them, but I would encourage everyone to not stop with Small Business Saturday. And we have holidays coming up, and there are lots of businesses out there that could use your business. They've got great things that you can't find anywhere else, and so please just keep it up for those small businesses. Number 2, I am really looking forward to, there is a Wish for Wheels build, a bike build tomorrow at Stevens Elementary. I'm sure we'll talk about it more later, but I don't know if I'll be able to sleep tonight because I'm so excited to be a part of it. It's going to be great. And in the wake of 2J, us passing 2J, there's going to be kiddos with bikes out on the road, and they're going to be safe. So, and number 3 for me, just another echo of how proud I am to be a resident of Wheat Ridge, and everyone that showed up here tonight to speak on behalf of the true residents of Wheat Ridge and the love that we have for each other and the way that we look out for each other and the way that people continually will say hate does not belong in Wheat Ridge. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Rome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Snell. I am too excited about the Wish for Wheels. Thank you so much for the city and everybody making this come together. Really, really looking forward to it, seeing those little kids. You know, bike is, when I was a kid and I had a bike, it was like, that was my freedom. I could go where I wanted, got a few cuts and scrapes, but really looking forward to it. It really says a lot about the city. A quick note, I have a couple more things, but a quick note was, about a week or so ago, I was traveling to work out in Golden, and I'm like, oh, there's the Willie Bean. It's gonna make somebody's day, in the truck, and I thought, yep, that's my council member. I felt pretty good about that. And then, as far as, being a council member, I'm always trying to, listen to people's stories, advocate for our city. I took an Uber driver. I went to my back home and to visit my family over Thanksgiving, and I was chatting with a guy, and he was from Transylvania, and he kept going on and on about pastries and bakery. And if you don't know me, that's my Achilles heel. I love good pastries. And he kept going on, and I asked him, I said, what is your favorite? And he was telling me, he said, Get Rights. He was from Transylvania. He moved and he living in Broomfield, and he was telling me about how this Get Rights bakery was on par with Belgium bakeries. I didn't tell him I sit in council, and it's one of my favorites. But for 30 minutes, I'd hear this guy talk about all these delicious bakeries, and by the time I got to the airport, I was so hungry. But I just want to share that with you, that I was really amazed at, yes, we are very lucky to get, some of these really good businesses in our city. Very thankful. And then on the way back, I had a different Uber driver, and we were chatting, and as we came through Wheat Ridge, I'm talking to him, asking him about affordable housing and showing him, where our Ives project is. We had some good conversations about affordable housing, and he was telling me about how, his friends and family, were trying to find affordable housing, and I said, this is what we're doing in Wheat Ridge, so I'm very proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank council again for another year. I hope I do you guys proud. I want to thank everybody who came out tonight from the community to bring love. I think Councilor Hulteen had the quote earlier, you don't fight hate with hate, you fight hate with love. And they filled the room with a lot of that tonight, and I think we all felt that, and I think that's what Wheat Ridge is. Wheat Ridge is people who stand up for each other and have each other's backs. And, we got bullied a little bit a couple weeks ago, but we stood up, and we stood up again tonight, and that's who this community is. Doesn't matter how big we are, we stand up, and that's always great to see. Last Saturday, I stopped in, even though it was Small Business Saturday, and I was running around doing a bunch of stuff in Wheat Ridge. I had to stop in at the Lakeside Walmart for a moment. It's the only stuff you can get at Walmart, and bumped into a bunch of our Wheat Ridge's finest there doing Operation Blue Santa. So my kids went in and grabbed a couple of presents and threw them in the thing, but it was awesome to see our Wheat Ridge police officers there. Thought for a minute something was going on, but felt pretty good once I walked in there. This Saturday, coming up at Wheat Ridge High School, there's the wreath making program. It's pretty awesome. It's $20. It's all you can eat, cocoa, snacks, all that stuff, and you get to make some really cool wreaths. All the money goes to the Wheat Ridge Agricultural Program. We did it last year. It's beautiful, really cool wreaths, and your kids can have a lot of fun with that. So take advantage of that. I believe that's from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock on Saturday. So you can do that and then head over to the holiday celebration. This Thursday, District 3 is pretty excited, as is Wheat Ridge. It's the grand opening for Chick-fil-A. We're excited. So I believe that's early 9:30, so you can get your breakfast before you get your lunch, and then maybe you can get your dinner there, because I think that's what my family's planning on doing. So, but in all seriousness, if you can find it in Wheat Ridge, find it and buy it in Wheat Ridge. Everything you need for Christmas is right here in this city. You don't need to go anywhere else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem Stites, and congratulations on your reelection as Mayor Pro Tem. You've done a great job, and I look forward to working with you on the coming year. Speaking of local businesses and ribbon cuttings, last week we cut 2 ribbons in town for Colorado Osteopathic and Integrative Medicine over on 44th Avenue. And then we also cut a ribbon for Mr. Biscuits right across from the Green at 38th. Two new businesses in our town. I think we did, maybe one of them was an anniversary one, but we've also, as the Mayor Pro Tem indicated, we have one coming up on Thursday for the Chick-fil-A, but we're also on Thursday cutting a ribbon for the Tabor Lake Apartments. This is the old Howard Johnson's building on Tabor Lake and across from I-70. We're really happy to have that as workforce housing in our community, and we continue to see, just great things going on in our community. So, in that regard, you saw our community show up tonight and talk to us about love and caring and concern and the feelings that they have for the people in our city, and real genuine Wheat Ridgians, and if that's the right term. I want to thank them. I want to thank all of council, and it's love combats hate, and that's certainly true. We will do everything that we can to preserve the rights that we have as Americans and free citizens, and I want to have you all thank you for being part of that, and it's a great place to live. It's a great place to be. So, we'll be back here next week, right, Mr. Goff? In a study session at 6:30 right here in City Hall. Is there any more business to come before our council tonight? Thank you all for joining us. We will stand adjourned.